I never meant to see her that often. It just worked out that way. The coffee shop near my friend's street was small. Half the time, the tables were wobbly, the ceiling fan made this soft ticking noise, and the owner always forgot to wipe down the counter. But it was quiet, and I like quiet places. That's where she showed up. My friend's mom. Not in the loud, "Look who's here" way. More like she slipped into the room the same way sunlight comes in through blinds. Soft, unannounced, but impossible not to notice. The first time, she was holding a thermos and asked if the seat across from me was taken. It wasn't. It usually wasn't. "You're up early," she said, with the kind of smile that seemed more like a habit than a performance. I nodded, unsure what to say. Couldn't sleep. She looked at me for half a beat longer than people normally do. Not searching, just present. That's what caught me. After that, mornings had a rhythm. Sometimes she'd be there already, skimming through the news on her phone. Other times, I'd be first, watching the door like I wasn't. She remembered my order: black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Once, when the barista messed it up, she slid her cup toward me without a word. Her hand brushed mine just lightly enough that it could have been an accident. I didn't ask. There was nothing movie-like about it. She wore simple clothes, nothing dramatic. Sometimes her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling when she leaned forward. She had this way of tapping her thumb against her thermos when she was thinking. It was ordinary, but it made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't name. I think she noticed me noticing. At least once, she caught my eyes flicking toward her hands. She didn't move them. Most days, our conversations barely lasted more than 3 lines. "How's your week been?" "Busy." "Yours?" "About the same." The pauses mattered more than the words. Maybe that's why I started staying longer, even when my coffee was cold. I'd scroll through my phone, open a text draft to someone I never sent, close it again. She never asked who. One morning, the shop was louder than usual. College kids with laptops, a couple arguing too openly at the corner. She leaned closer, almost conspiratorial, and said, "This stays between us, but I come here just to escape the noise at home." She let the words hang there, like she wasn't sure if she'd given away too much. I nodded, careful not to press. But my mind kept circling back to it, like tracing the outline of a shape you can't quite see. Later, as I left, she touched my sleeve lightly, like catching my attention without calling it. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, voice low. I said yes before I even thought about it. That night, I found myself staring at the empty draft box on my phone. No words, just her sentence replaying over and over. "This stays between us." And somehow, I knew tomorrow wouldn't feel the same. The next morning I arrived earlier than usual. I told myself it was just coincidence, but I knew better. The coffee shop was almost empty, just the low hum of the espresso machine and a radio playing something soft. I'd barely settled in when she walked in. She noticed me first. "You beat me to it," she said, easing into the chair across from me. I shrugged. "Didn't sleep again." "You should work on that," she replied, but her tone wasn't scolding. More concerned. The kind of voice that makes you feel like someone was paying attention, even when you hadn't asked them to. We sat there for a while, not speaking. She stirred her tea absently, even though she hadn't added sugar. I kept folding the napkin on my lap, creasing it into sharp lines, then smoothing it back out. I didn't know if she noticed, but something in her stillness made me feel like she probably did. Finally, she sighed, glancing toward the window. "I used to come here years ago, when my son was little. He hated the smell of coffee back then, so I'd sneak out just to get 5 minutes of quiet." Her son, my friend. For a second, the words sat between us like a glass about to tip. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. She smiled faintly, as though she regretted bringing it up. "I guess some habits don't change," she added softer now. I wanted to ask her more, but something held me back. "Instead," I said, "I think everyone needs a place like this." Her eyes flicked toward me. "Do you?" The question lingered. I thought of the unsent texts on my phone, the nights staring at the ceiling. I wanted to tell her how sometimes I stayed at this shop longer than I needed to, just because it felt less lonely. But I only managed, "Yeah, I do." That earned me a longer silence. Not the kind that pushes you apart, but the kind where both of you are careful not to break it. She took a sip of her tea, then set it down deliberately. I don't usually say this to anyone, but I don't like being home all the time. The quiet there feels heavy. I didn't ask why. The lines around her eyes told enough of a story. Divorce, maybe. Or years of something wearing thin. Whatever it wasn't my place to dig. And yet, hearing her admit it made something in me tighten. I wanted to offer something back, but the words stuck. So instead, I offered the only truth I could manage. I know what that feels like. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes held me in place, like she was trying to measure the weight of what I'd just said. We didn't speak for a while after that. The shop filled up slowly, students, workers grabbing to-go cups. But in the corner where we sat, it felt like time bent differently. At one point, she reached for the sugar packets, her hand brushing close to mine. Neither of us moved away right away. My heart was too loud in my chest, but I pretended to study the napkin I'd ruined with folds. Eventually, she pulled back, smiling like nothing had happened. But I felt the static linger. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. "Hey," she said, almost casually. "My grocery bags keep tearing on me lately. If you're around later this week, maybe you could help me carry them upstairs." I wanted to answer right away, but her expression stopped me. She said it like it was a simple favor, but the pause before her words carried something heavier. "Yeah," I said, my voice lower than I expected. "Of course." She nodded, half a smile on her lips. "Good." And then she was gone, leaving me staring at the empty chair, wondering why the idea of helping with groceries felt like more than it should. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me at BY Thursday evening. I found myself standing outside her building, carrying 2 grocery bags that threatened to split at the bottom. She laughed softly as I tried to juggle them, reaching to steady one. "Careful," she said, fingers brushing my wrist. It should have been nothing, just a simple errand. But walking those few steps behind her up the narrow stairwell, my chest tightened with every footfall. The air smelled faintly of detergent and warm dust. Too domestic. Too intimate. Inside, her apartment was quiet. Lamps instead of overhead lights. A stack of unopened mail on the counter. She slipped her shoes off by the door, and I hesitated before following. "You can set them here," she said, gesturing to the kitchen. "Thanks for doing this." I shrugged, trying to sound casual. "No problem." But my voice felt too loud in the small space. She began unpacking slowly, placing apples one by one into a bowl. Her movements were steady, almost deliberate. I leaned against the counter, watching without meaning to. When she noticed, she smiled faintly, but looked away just as quickly. "Want some tea?" she asked. I nodded. She filled the kettle. The silence between us stretched, but it wasn't empty. It pressed against me, thick with something unsaid. Halfway through, the sound of keys rattled at the door. My stomach dropped. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, almost panicked, but then softened when the noise stopped. Just a neighbor passing by in the hall. Still, the interruption left a mark. She set the cups down with more force than needed, a thin clink echoing in the kitchen. We sat at the small table. Too close. The kettle steam curled upward, dampening the air. I caught myself staring at her hands again, the way she cupped the mug, fingers resting against the ceramic. She noticed. "Don't," she said quietly. Not harsh, almost pleading. I pulled my gaze away, my throat tightening. "Sorry, the words caught." She shook her head, as if to erase it. But the pause lingered. After a while, she exhaled, softer now. "You remind me of when I was younger, before things got complicated." I didn't know what to do with that. My heart thudded against my ribs. Part of me wanted to ask, complicated how? Another part knew better. Instead, I said, "I don't think you're complicated." Her eyes flicked to mine at that, and for a second, neither of us moved. The space between us seemed impossibly small. I could see the faint crease near her lips, the way her breath caught just slightly. I leaned forward, just barely, enough that the air shifted. She didn't pull away. Not right away. Then, almost abruptly, she stood, breaking the spell. "It's late. You should head home." I nodded, though it felt like my body lagged behind my voice. At the door, she touched my arm lightly, almost apologetic. "Thank you for the groceries." Her hand lingered half a second too long. And then it was gone that we didn't see each other for a few days after the groceries. I told myself it was fine, that I needed the space. But the truth was, every time I walked past the coffee shop, I slowed down, half expecting her to be there. She wasn't. By Sunday afternoon, I couldn't sit still. I sent my friend a message, something meaningless about plans next week, and then deleted it before he could see it. My phone screen stayed dark after that. Later, I spotted her outside the building. She was sitting on the bench near the entrance, a paper bag of produce beside her, hands folded loosely in her lap. She looked tired, not in a dramatic way, but in that softened, worn-out way people get when they've been carrying something too long. I almost kept walking. Almost. But she looked up, and her expression shifted, surprise first, then something warmer. She patted the space beside her. Sit, if you're not in a rush. I wasn't. The air smelled faintly of rain, even though the sky was still holding it back. I sat down, leaving just enough distance so it didn't seem intentional. But even in that space, I could feel the pull. She exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the sidewalk. You know, I used to come out here at night, when things were worse at home. The way she said worse made me pause. I waited. My ex, he hated quiet. Always needed the TV on, or the radio. I used to sneak outside just to breathe. My son thought I was just getting fresh air. She gave a short laugh, though it didn't carry much humor. I looked at her, not sure what to do with my hands. You don't have to tell me this. I know, she said softly. I just don't usually say it out loud. We sat with that. Her fingers toyed with the corner of the paper bag. I found myself clenching and unclenching my fist against my knee, like I could squeeze out the words I wasn't brave enough to say. Finally, I blurted, I don't like it when I don't see you. She turned, eyebrows raised slightly. Not mocking, more startled. I shook my head quickly. I got used to it. You being there. At the shop. And when you weren't, my voice faltered. It felt strange. Like something was missing. Her expression softened, but there was something cautious in her eyes too. That's not good, she murmured. Not for you. Why not? The words came out sharper than I meant. She let out a quiet sigh. Because you're 20. And I'm. She broke off, lips pressing together. I don't care. My chest felt tight. It feels different with you. Like I'm not invisible. Her gaze dropped to her hands. She stayed silent long enough that I thought I'd ruined it. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, Do you know how long it's been since someone said that to me? I didn't answer. Couldn't. The quiet stretched, filled only by the distant hum of traffic. She finally looked at me, and the weight of it made my throat close. I could see the question in her eyes, the same one in mine. I shifted, leaning slightly closer, like the air itself was pushing me forward. She didn't move away. Not this time. Her hand brushed against mine on the bench, deliberate, not accidental. I shouldn't, she whispered. I swallowed, barely breathing. Then don't. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up. Her lips parted as if she might say something more, then closed again. The space between us felt impossibly fragile, like one more word would shatter it completely. And then she asked, barely audible, What are we doing? The question hung there, heavier than anything either of us had confessed. After that bench conversation, everything felt sharper. I carried her question, What are we doing? Around like it was written on the inside of my palm. Every time I glanced down, there it was. The next morning, I went to the coffee shop earlier than usual. I thought maybe she'd be there, waiting, but the seat across from mine stayed empty. The barista even asked if I wanted 2 coffees, like I usually did. I shook my head, feeling foolish. The day after, I tried again. Nothing. By the 3rd day, I caught myself staring at the door too long, waiting for her to walk through. And that's when I knew I'd crossed some line inside myself. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't at the shop. It was outside the building. She was carrying mail in one hand, her phone in the other. She noticed me immediately, but her smile felt different, tight, like it was stitched on. Hey, I said too casually. Hey, she echoed, tucking the letters under her arm. She didn't stop walking toward her apartment. I followed a step behind. Haven't seen you around. Been busy, she said, unlocking her door without looking at me. Work stuff. Her tone was polite. Nothing more. It knocked the air out of me in a way I didn't expect. Inside, I replayed it again and again. Busy. Work stuff. The words felt rehearsed, like they were meant to shut a door without slamming it. That night, scrolling through my phone, I almost typed something. Are you okay? Did I do something? But erased it before sending. The following week, I saw her with someone else. A man, about her age, standing outside her building. He handed her something. A small box, maybe groceries, and she laughed, quick and light, the way she never did with me. I froze halfway down the sidewalk, pretending to check my phone. She didn't notice me. Or if she did, she didn't show it. The scene kept playing in my head, looping until it burned. The handoff, the easy smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. I told myself it was probably nothing, an old friend, a neighbor. But the part of me that had leaned closer on that bench didn't believe it. I stopped going to the coffee shop after that. Couldn't stand the empty chair, the way it accused me of waiting for something that wasn't coming. But even avoiding her didn't help. Every sound in the hallway made me tense. Every knock on a neighbor's door had me thinking it might be hers. One night, I heard faint music through the wall. Her voice too, low, muffled. I pressed my hand against the plaster like it might tell me the truth. It didn't. Days passed. I kept catching myself drafting messages. I miss seeing you. Or was it something I said? Once, I even typed, "What are we doing?" But I never pressed send. Instead, my phone stayed full of unfinished sentences. I saw her once more, briefly. She was stepping into her car, sunglasses on, hair pulled back. She waved when she noticed me, but it was a distant gesture, like the wave you give a neighbor you don't know well. Nothing lingered in it. I waved back. My throat felt dry. When the car pulled away, I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the empty space it left behind. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence that I didn't plan to see her again. Not really. I told myself I was done with waiting, done with the half-looks and the silences that said more than words. But one evening, when I was heading up the stairs, she stepped out of her apartment at the same time. No escape route. Just her, holding a mug of tea in one hand, a cardigan loose over her shoulders. She stopped when she saw me. "You're late," she said. I frowned. "For what?" She gave the smallest shrug. "Coffee. You haven't been around." I wanted to say, "You pulled away first." But it came out as, "Didn't think you wanted me there." Her eyes flickered, surprise, maybe guilt. She leaned against the doorframe, cradling the mug close. I didn't. And I did. The hallway went quiet except for the faint hum of someone's TV a few doors down. "Which is it?" I asked. My voice was steadier than I felt. She set the mug down on a side table near the door, like her hands needed to be free. "It's both. You're too young. You're my son's friend. And you make me feel seen in a way I don't know what to do with." Her words landed heavy. I wanted to laugh, or maybe just sit down on the stairs and let the weight of it wash over me. Instead, I said, "You think I don't feel the same? That I don't know what this looks like?" She pressed her lips together. "You shouldn't have to carry that. Not at your age." "That's not your choice," I said, sharper now. Then I caught myself, lowered my tone. "You can't decide for me what matters." She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the conflict in her eyes. Part longing, part fear. Her hands twisted together, then fell apart again. For a long time, neither of us moved. Finally, she whispered, "I don't want to lose myself in this." I swallowed hard. "You won't." Her laugh was quiet, shaky. "You say that like you know." I wanted to reach for her, but my hands stayed at my sides. "I know what it feels like when you're not there. And it's worse than whatever this is." Her breath caught, almost like a sob she refused to let out. She looked down, then back up, her voice fragile. "You scare me." "Why?" "Because I want this," she said, her words so low I barely heard them. The air shifted. It felt like every wall in the hallway leaned closer. She stepped forward, not closing the space completely, but enough that I felt the warmth of her body in the narrow gap. I whispered, "Then stop pretending you don't." Her hand lifted, hovered near my arm, then finally rested there. Not firm, just a touch, but it sent a current through me I couldn't disguise. We stood like that, close enough to feel, but not enough to cross over. After a moment, She let out a breath and said, barely audible, "Okay, just that." And somehow, it felt like the most dangerous and honest thing she'd ever said. It didn't change overnight. Nothing really does. The morning after that hallway conversation, I half expected things to feel different, louder somehow, sharper. But when I walked into the coffee shop, there she was. Same corner table, same thermos. She looked up, caught my eye, and smiled in a way that was small but real. I sat down across from her. No hesitation this time. "You're late," she teased. I checked my phone. 8:47 a.m. The exact time I'd started showing up weeks ago. I couldn't help laughing. Not by much. That became our rhythm again. Not every day, not always at the same time, but often enough that it felt like ours. She still ordered tea, though sometimes she let me finish it when she was done. I still stuck with black coffee. One rainy afternoon, we ended up back on the same bench where she'd once asked me the question that rattled through my chest for days. "What are we doing?" We didn't bring it up again. We didn't need to. She leaned against the backrest, head tilted slightly toward me, and I let my arm rest on the space between us. Not touching, but close. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It just was. At her apartment, it shifted slowly too. Sometimes I helped carry her groceries upstairs, just like before. Sometimes we'd sit at her kitchen table long after the kettle stopped whistling, mugs cooling in our hands. She'd talk about work, her son, little things from her day. I'd listen, adding just enough of myself that it felt balanced. It wasn't about dramatic declarations. It was about knowing her laugh well enough to tell when it was genuine and when it was covering something up. It was about noticing the way she tapped her thumb against her thermos whenever she was deep in thought. It was about the ordinary details, the ones that would go unnoticed by anyone else. One evening, she admitted, almost offhand, "I don't dread the quiet at home anymore." I didn't say anything, just reached across the table, folded the edge of her napkin the way I used to fold mine, and pushed it toward her. She smiled, the corners of her mouth softening in that way I'd come to memorize. Life wasn't perfect. My friend still didn't know. Some days she'd still retreat into herself, quiet and untouchable. And I had nights where the weight of it, our difference in age, in circumstance, settled on me heavier than I liked. But then I'd see her waiting in the shop, or hear her voice through the thin wall late at night, and I'd know it was worth carrying. It wasn't about chasing something impossible. It was about finding a way to live in the in-between, together. The last time we left the coffee shop that week, she touched my sleeve lightly as we walked to the door. Just a small gesture, one no one else would notice. But I felt it settle deep in my chest. "This stays between us," she said again, her voice quiet, almost playful this time. I smiled, holding the door open for her. "I know." And I did. Not as a secret to hide, but as something that only we understood.